All right, we're back down at the Chiefs pit. We got Timmy Petty, Mark Petty, and Richie Petty. Special guest in the house, we got Billy Biscoe. Billy came to work here in '73, and he actually worked on this car behind us in '74. So we're going to get into a little bit of the early days of Billy. But Billy goes a long ways with our family, because when I started racing and Mark started racing, he built our first race car. So we got a lot of ties in.
And Timmy's.
Yeah, Timmy's too. I forgot about that. Yeah, the 38.
We don't have to talk about that. Yeah, no, hey,
The Rental Racer.
the Rambler.
So Billy's been tied into our family for a long time, and so we're gonna talk mostly today about this car behind us and his involvement, the early days of the Petties and there. Hey, before we get started on this, vacation time's coming up. Go check your spare tire, because most time you check your 4 tires around, but most people forget about that spare. So check your spare tire; it might come in handy. So now we're gonna get back to the '74. Timmy, you want to start us off?
I'm locked up with that one.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to run there and check my tire right now. I like it. Good idea.
All right, so I'm going to go back a little bit further. So let's talk a little bit where you're from.
Safety Harbor, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area.
Okay, and your parents were Leonard and Margene Biscoe,
Morty.
but we called him Morty for what reason?
Because he was a mortician.
Okay. And so you got interested in cars because you was like 14 years old and raising all kinds of cane.
Absolutely troublemaker.
And you had to make a pact with your mom and dad.
Pretty much.
Because you'd already been kind of wrenching on some local guys' race cars, which would be the Sunshine Speedway. Where's that at?
St. Pete,
And the Golden Gate,
Tampa, Florida.
which is quarter and 3/8 mile race.
Correct.
I never heard of them until I talked to them about it earlier. But so you was working on cars for people like that, and you was going to quit school. You had enough in
absolutely.
school at
Yeah.
14.
I was the smartest man in the world.
Well, some things never changed, did they?
No.
Okay. So anyway, so you went to you tell us the deal that your mom and dad made with you.
Well, unbeknownst to me, they went behind my back and talked
Well,
to
they were your parents, by the
Well,
way.
I can't help that. I'm blessed to have them. I truly am. But they went behind my back to the guidance counselor and the assistant principal. And they got me hooked up to a vocational tech program in automotive technology.
Mm-hmm.
I had to spend the afternoon classes in the classroom for the first year, which was a blessing. Kept me off the streets. The second year, I was privileged enough to work in a machine shop. And I learned a lot. But I was just a flunky that cleaned up the machines and the shavings off the Bridgeport and the lathe beds and stuff like that. But I learned a lot. Well, the owner of that machine shop passed away. And of course, the son that inherited the building and the business, and he sold the property and the business because the property was worth more
Makes sense.
than the business was making. So that left me back on the streets again. So the guidance counselor finagled around, and he knew I'd already built a race car and was racing it. And he got me hooked up with Jim Franklin in Ruskin, Florida, working for him, building the quick changes, which was a blessing in disguise because that old man treated me like a stepchild. But again, I was just a flunky.
What's his company's name? What was it?
Franklin Quick
Ring.
Change.
Yeah. They were big in the short
Oh,
track
yes.
stuff. Yeah.
And it was like a who's who during speed weeks down there because you had people from all over the country coming to pick the old man's brain.
So you started rubbing elbows with a lot of
Oh, God.
racers, and tell us a little bit about some of them guys
Oh.
that came down there that you was talking about, the Chrysler engineers and whatnot.
Well, during the winter months, all the Yankees would transplant down to Florida.
Snowbirding?
Snowbirds. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the fortunate people to meet that predates Larry Rathcaff and the Chrysler engineers was Ronnie Householder.
I remember that name.
Okay. And I'm sure Lee and your daddy were all real good with Ronnie. But he would come down there, and Jim Franklin himself and Ronnie were open wheel midget racers from up in the New England area. So they became real good camaraderie buddies and tell all kinds of racing war stories. And I would stop work just to hear these war stories. course, the old man catch me here and put my butt back to work. But I became real good, close friends with Ronnie, him also. But he was down there to represent Chrysler Corporation and promote the Hemis and some of that kind of stuff at the dealerships.
So what you, I know you said you're 16, 18, 15 years
14,
old.
15.
So what year are we talking? We're gonna tell you age here, but
I know he's-
60s?
65.
Yeah, mid-60s, late
60s,
60s,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
60,
So obviously, Chrysler's huge in the racing.
oh gosh, yes,
Yeah.
64, 65.
You're right at the peak of it.
In fact, I remember Ronnie being down there. They hadn't even built I was hanging out of the garage. Wayne Doken was in Clearwater. He had just built a Dodge Cornet, maybe, with a Hemi engine for the very first Gator Nationals.
Wow.
And they didn't even have I-77 built yet for the interstate.
Gotcha.
We had built the motor, and we took it off the trailer and run it up the highway to break the motor in. Put it back on the trailer and went to the first Gator Nationals. Now, don't ask me where we finished or qualified or nothing. I don't
Right,
remember.
Don't matter, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna move forward a little bit. What year did you go out to Texas and meet Tiny
Oh,
Lund and that
God.
crowd?
I got tired of the beating and banging and tearing my car up every Saturday night at the short tracks.
Uh-huh,
So I decided, Bill Francis started that Grand American Series.
okay.
So I went to the junkyard and found an old fastback Mustang. Decided to build me a Grand American car. And I took it out to, I believe it was Orange, Texas, Houston,
Okay.
Texas, someplace out in Texas for a Grand American event. But we stopped in Shreveport. And I tore it all to hell.
So you never
Qualified.
made it? You never made it?
No, I never made it to Texas.
You never told us all this. You reckon tearing up cars. He's always getting on to us for tearing up cars.
Well, I can't help it.
He was trying to help you.
But I met Tiny out there, and he said, well, if you'll come back with me to Cross, South Carolina, I'll give you a job. You can work on it in my shop and get your stuff back together. So I ended up living in the fish camp with him and Wanda. And,
Was that pretty good eating?
well, it was catch of the day.
Oh, okay.
You didn't know what you were going to get when you got
I
back.
never been to that.
Oh.
My mother always talked
I
about
know.
Tiny's fish camp.
Yeah.
a
Oh,
lot.
man.
Yeah.
It was a blast out there. But he he had a bait shop and rented boats and motors for Lake Marion, I think it was. And people, doctors, lawyers, everybody
was on
would
the-
come
It
down.
was the bottom lake at Santee Cooper.
But now, see, he didn't keep his race car at the fish camp. He had to go around to the other side of the lake to Marion.
Okay.
Yeah, Manning. Manning?
So
It's Santee Cooper was the
Yeah.
bottom lake, right?
Yeah.
They got a top lake, and so he was at the bottom lake.
Yeah, but
But you had to go up to the top. But okay.
So what year did you meet Pop Red? Because wasn't he your fishing buddy?
yeah. Well, see, him and Tiny came from Iowa,
Together.
Indiana or whatever, Iowa
Iowa.
here.
Yeah,
Council Bluffs.
And
I don't know where Tiny was from, but it was out
in that area.
somehow or other, we were down there racing. He come in Tiny's shop, and he was a big old burly bat.
About that time.
Yeah,
And while you were living at
Yeah,
the fish camp.
yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to put the timeline together.
and Pop Red, of all the people I've ever met, was the outdoorsest man I've ever met.
Yeah.
He loved his hunting and fishing.
Yep.
And outdoors.
Well, you fished together for years.
Oh
didn't
gosh, yes.
And his garden. He liked to have a big
Yep.
garden.
But I honestly think he loved to fish just so he could take time to think about tricks to the race car.
you? Yeah, he was
Get
definitely
by
relaxed.
himself.
Did he ever sing while he was doing the tra-la-la thing?
Tra-la-la-la, yeah.
Yeah, and he'd be.
But they're
it
all
worked because he'd reel them in. We wouldn't.
There was all kinds of fishing stories I could tell about him alone.